Okay, here we go with three more subnetting problems. These will be for tomorrow, February 10th. So the first IP address we're going to deal with is 65.187.68.34 with a /28. Now get used to writing down this chart. You got to get used to it so that you understand how this works. It'll make your life a lot easier. So what we're going to do, we're going to go /28. It's going to go up by 16. And obviously we need to have one network ID below it that it belongs to and one network above that it does not belong to. So what we're going to do, always start out at .0. Add 16 to see if that 34 will fall between 0, 16. Obviously it's not going to, so we're going to add another 16. And we're at 32. Now, 34 does not fall there, so we're going to add another 16. And we are now at 48. The 34 falls between the two. Okay, so now we have our one that's inside the goalpost, which is obviously going to be the .32. And the other network ID that we can't use because it's above it is going to be the .48. So everything between the 32 and less than 48, which will be .47, all belongs to the subnet. So let's go up here, and we know our network ID is going to be 32. The first usable has to be one higher than the network ID. The broadcast is always going to be one less than the next network ID. Well, the next network ID is 48, so we're going to go with 47. And one less than the broadcast is 46, which is your last usable. Network ID is even, broadcast is odd. There are 16 IP addresses, 14 of them are usable. Okay, our next problem, we're going to deal with the IP address of 136.42.87.76 with a /27. Go up to your chart, look at this, it goes over, it gives you 32 IP addresses. That's the number we're going to go up by. So let's start out like we always do with .0 and add 32. Let's see if that 76 falls between there. Obviously it's not going to. We're going to add another 32. And now you're at 64. Well, 76 does not fall within that range, so let's add another 32, which will put us at 96. And now we have the 64 and 96, the 76 falls between them. Remember, the 64 is the one that's going to be inside the goalpost. Just a way of me getting you to understand how to kind of divide this up. The next one is going to be outside it. So everything in here is part of that subnet. So your network ID is going to be .64. Your first usable has to be one higher than your network ID. Your broadcast has to be one less than your next network ID, so it's 95. And your last usable is one less than your broadcast. So network ID is even, the broadcast is odd. There are 32 IP addresses, only 30 are usable. Okay, for the third and final problem in this particular video, we're going to use IP address 178.34.57.187 with a /25. Now go to your CIDR chart. Notice the /25 goes up by 128. So again, start out at 0. With 0, you're going to add 128. And now you're going to have 128 as your next network ID. 187 does not fall in there. So you're going to add another 128. Now this is where people tend to get confused, because they think 128 equals 256, which it does. But remember, you cannot use 256 in an IP address, nothing higher than 255. Well, the network IDs have to be even, so it can't be 255. That's not going to work. So what happens is kind of like an odometer in your car. It is going to need to roll over. And I'm pretty much going to get rid of this one to get any confusion down. And what will happen is when you roll over, instead of using 256, you're going to the next network ID. So it's going to roll from a 57 to a 58, and you're going to go to a .0. And now the 187 falls in this range. So you're going to have over here, you're going to have a .57, .128, and out here, you're going to have a .58, .0, okay? So now we know our network ID is going to be 57.128. The first usable has to be one higher than the network ID, which is 129. Your broadcast has to be one less than the next network ID. Now we can go back to that 255. And the last usable is always one less than the network ID, which makes it 254. So when you get to this situation where you're going to roll up, just think if you're doing 64s, 0, 64, 128, 192. The next one would be 256. You can't. It has to be 0, and you have to roll it into that next octet. Make that change by 1. So if you can remember that rule, it will help you. Now I'm going to get ready to do some worded questions where it won't be just this. It'll be which one of these, what subnet does it belong to and what's the first usable? Some of the type of questions you could actually see. All right, that's it for this one.